Ladies and gentlemen, the Miami Dolphins are involved in trade talks involving a five-time Pro Bowler. And no, it's not Tua Tagovailoa. Let's get into it, starting right now. Miami Dolphins, according to a report from NFL insider Jordan Schultz, the Miami Dolphins having trade talks involving Minkah Fitzpatrick, the former All-Pro safety, when he was with the Pittsburgh Steelers, originally drafted by the Miami Dolphins, and then came back to Miami after we traded him. We traded Jalen Ramsey to acquire Minkah Fitzpatrick, trading Jonnu Smith as well this past offseason. And now it seems like Minkah Fitzpatrick on his way out the door again. Well, not really surprising in my opinion. Miami needed to find a way to cut the cost in terms of salary. And when you look at it, Minkah Fitzpatrick doesn't have any guaranteed money left on his contract. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, he's older. And when you're looking at non-guaranteed money left, the Miami Dolphins had to make a decision here. That was, do you extend him, which, as Miami is known for, would just randomly, under the Chris Grier era, would have just done exactly that. But John Eric Sullivan is a little bit different as a general manager. He is looking to be smart about the decisions. He's not going to give Minkah Fitzpatrick a big contract extension. Nope. No. Because he didn't play to that kind of level, and he's older as well, and injuries as well. So when you're looking at it as an overall broad spectrum, Minkah Fitzpatrick is not the same former All-Pro, Pro Bowl safety that everyone's used to seeing when he first came into the league. And as you get older, you end up getting a little bit slower, not as much of a playmaker as Minkah Fitzpatrick. Now, there are some trade destinations, so we're going to get right into that, potentially of where he could be traded to. But like we said, just currently involved in trade talks, not really sure with who yet or who the leading frontrunner could be. But this is good news for the Miami Dolphins. We've already hit the full reset button. Bradley Chubb's out the building. Tyreek Hill out the building. And now, while everyone thought Tua was going to be next, it's Minkah Fitzpatrick. That's a little bit of a shocker for Dolphin fans. However, we should be used to this kind of news because the Dolphins are clearing house. So expect some big names to be out the door, including more Chris Grier players here in the near future. Number one is the Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals are looking to overhaul the position. Geno Stone, their free agent safety, is most likely not returning. So therefore, they're going to be looking for a safety. Now, a lot of people have them potentially projected to select Caleb Downs with the number 10 overall pick, that elite safety out of Ohio State, somebody I'm really high on for the Dolphins. However, if we trade Minkah Fitzpatrick, that opens up another spot right there for us to go get him. However, if they do acquire Minkah Fitzpatrick, it wouldn't stop Cincinnati from doing it. However, if you get a guy like Minkah Fitzpatrick, they believe they can compete in the AFC North and improving that defense that was not very good last season. Number two is the Dallas Cowboys. And I actually wouldn't mind giving it to the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, they allow 297.3 passing yards per game, one of the worst in the league. And the safety position was underwhelming, to say the least. And when you're looking at the Dallas Cowboys, they're willing to put all their chips in the table. They're willing to spend whatever it takes to get the championship back into Jerry's world. However, they've come up short plenty. And they feel like maybe they're a former All-Pro, five-time Pro Bowler away from doing that. And when you're looking at Minkah Fitzpatrick going to want a contract, Jerry Jones is known for dragging it out, but ends up giving the players what they want in the end. The George Pickens situation may complicate this kind of trade. However, maybe they feel if they improve their safety position, it can help their offense and ultimately become a Super Bowl contender that they so call themselves every single year, that it's our year, and they're so far away from it. Number three is the Chicago Bears. Kevin Byard is aging, and like we mentioned before with Minkah Fitzpatrick getting older, getting a little bit slower, Kevin Byard, as much as he was good, he's getting older, and behind Jaquan Brisker, their young safety, there's a lack of depth. Maybe if you bring in Minkah Fitzpatrick, you have two safeties right there, intertwine the safeties, maybe have them both on the field at the same time, however creative they can get on defense with Dennis Allen, the former Saints head coach, now defense coordinator for the Bears. And after a really good run in the postseason, maybe they feel Minkah Fitzpatrick can create an even bigger impact on that defense that was 1-2 games away from the Super Bowl. So that's another option here for Minkah Fitzpatrick could potentially go to. And number four is the Buffalo Bills. They're looking for stability at the position. Now, Taylor Rapp did not play well for the Buffalo Bills. They're an older team. Minka a little bit on the younger side of that kind of conversation. However, if they're wanting to go a different way, they could go with a younger safety. Now, they're too far back in the draft to do that. Potentially, maybe they do go safety. I'm not sure. But I don't know if they want to bring in Minkah Fitzpatrick. Maybe they feel he can get revenge against the Dolphins once again by if we trade him to Buffalo. I don't think that's the case. The Bills would be one team I would stay away from trading him to. I don't mind if he goes to the Bengals. Helps us with them hopefully not taking Caleb Downs. I would trade him potentially to the Cowboys because Cowboys is just the Cowboys. The Bears, I don't really mind because the Bears aren't, to me, a real big problem for the Dolphins, if I'm being frank with everyone. As much as I don't like Caleb Williams, I think the Bears are a really good football team. So I think Minkah could help them. He's not at the level of elite, but back end of his career has a chance at the end of the day to make an impact at one of these stops. But the fifth and final one is a team I don't mind trading him to. The only question is, what can we get in return? The Colts. They may lose Nick Cross to free agency, okay? And they're going to be hurt in that secondary. Yeah, they have Cam Bynum, who's good. But now maybe you pair him with Minkah Fitzpatrick, and that's a really good secondary right there. And you have Mike Hilton that they had, who they signed off the Dolphins off waivers after the Dolphins waived him. I think it was a bad idea. However, we saw how the Dolphins secondary ended up anyway. Minkah Fitzpatrick can make a big impact. You're talking about a team that was really good. They were like 7-2. I believe when Daniel Jones went down, they made the trade for Sauce Gardner, and they just did not end on a good note. Now, maybe they have Minkah Fitzpatrick go with Sauce Gardner, Mike Hilton, Cam Bynum. Starting to see a little bit something. If they are with Kwity Paye, Leatu Latu, DeForest Buckner. I mean, this is really good names on paper. We'll see how it ends up on the field, but that's another destination for the Dolphins. Now, what do I believe we can get for Minkah Fitzpatrick? I think maybe a day 3 pick. A day 3 pick. And when we're looking at the salary of Minkah Fitzpatrick, okay, according to Over the Cap, let's just take a look here in just a minute at the Miami Dolphins situation. All right. 1 second. There we go. So if we're zooming in here on Minkah Fitzpatrick, he's the third name down. This is right now, if we cut him before June 1st, we're saving $5.85 million while incurring dead money of $12.996. Okay. Now, the dead money, what that would basically do is we're just not able to use that, and he's off the books after 1 year. Instead, if we trade him pre-June 1st, it's the same amount of dead money, same amount of cap. However, it's spread. It's basically the same. If we trade him post-June 1st or cut him post-June 1st, you're looking at the savings you would save against the cap at 15.6, whereas you incurred $3.249 million in dead money. Problem is, in 2027, all that dead money you didn't incur in 2026 pops up on the books. All right? So now that's where that gets tricky, is if you trade him post-June 1st, same thing. You incur money next year in dead money, whereas you can just take it all this year and be done with it. Now, I mentioned a couple weeks ago the possibility of trading Minkah Fitzpatrick to save money against the cap. Now, we've made some moves to get under it. I think this would just help. The dead money, yeah, it's not great, and we already have a huge amount of dead money anyway. But at the end of the day, Minkah, to me, is not going to help this team win next season, if I'm being truly honest. Wasn't happy about acquiring him. I thought he could have been something, but he's not at that level anymore as he was when he first came to Miami. That pairing didn't work with Ashton Davis. The defense was atrocious this year. And ultimately, this team is not going to be competitive for the next 1 to 2 years. So why not trade him, get a pick, save yourself some money this year, and ultimately get him off your books and just move forward. We've hit the full reset button on this team. The rebuild has started. Now, Tua is still the big outlier. What do we do with his contract? Does he stay another year? Help us come 2027, because as we get into it right here, we're looking at 2026 at the moment. If we cut him right now, you're looking at almost $43 million in cap savings negative. So you'd be in the negative again, whereas we're already where we just became in the positive. But if you were to cut him in 2027, before June 1st, you're at $21.6 million in cap savings while incurring $31.8 million in dead money, okay? So now that's where it gets interesting because Tua, next year, his cap is better and his dead money's lower. Now, I know Dolphins fans don't want to hear Tua coming back, but it could be the best situation financially for the Miami Dolphins. Now, I understand everyone wanting him not to be on the Dolphins anymore. Problem is, his contract is too much. No one's going to trade for it, even if we eat a big salary, to be honest. Number two, it's hard to get out of, and the financials just don't add up. You'd end up hurting the team more than you would be helping the team by keeping him, by getting rid of him, basically, is what you would do to this team. Because any money we'd have to potentially make it a little bit better could get taken away, and we have to make more moves to compensate for that because of the financials. Now, part of that's Chris Grier. You can thank him once again for that contract because it was a year too early, and it proved to me what Chris Grier already knew. He had too many years at the GM position. He should have been fired a couple years earlier. However, we're in the position we're in. So that's where we're at. But Minkah Fitzpatrick involved in trade talks to potentially be out of Miami. It's not Tua Tagovailoa, so a little bit of a shocker, but this was a move that was expected. Now, I don't really mind where Minkah Fitzpatrick goes. I just want him traded. It saves us some cap this year, and ultimately it helps us keep bringing this team down to the studs and rebuilding it from the ground up, and that's what John Eric Sullivan has talked about. They need to rebuild this team, build through the draft, I should say, and ultimately bring in their own, retain their own, and by getting rid of Chris Grier's players who he brought in and gave these bad contracts to is just clearing house. And ultimately, they're showing it through their actions how they want to build this team. I'm on board with it. But we'll see where Minkah Fitzpatrick ends up and if anything comes of it. But just a little bit of some news within the last hour that Minkah Fitzpatrick has been involved in trade talks to be shipped out of Miami. All right, that's going to do it for this edition here on Dolphins Roundtable. Make sure to hit the like button down below. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button to get all the latest content right here on Dolphins Roundtable. And we'll see you in the next episode.